kick off our conversation, could you share a little information about the role of the Special Rapporteur, your mandate, the scope of the mandate, how your reports and communications are prepared, and how can local NGOs cooperate with your mandate?
I'm sorry, I can't see you because I'm only seeing to the podium. But thanks for having me. I am hearing a little bit lower what you are saying in the room, so just be patient from that. But I'm very glad to be here with you today. Good afternoon to you. I am in Bogota, in Colombia, which is my homeland, and then it is 8 a.m. here, so we are like around the clock. But I am very pleased to be here with you. And thank you for opening this space for conversation. And about what is the role of the Special Rapporteur? So we are a part of the system of protection and promotion of human rights that is affiliated with the UN. And especially, we are part of the body of people and institutions that worldwide work for human rights. And then we are independent experts, special procedures, that is called our branch. That means that we don't have a contract with the UN. We act in our independent capacity, and this means that although we are part of the system, we receive the mandate from the Human Rights Council, which, as you know, is composed by several governments, and then we receive some logistical support by the Office of the High Commissioner, but then we don't respond to the Office of the High Commissioner, and we don't respond to any specific government or group of governments. We are independent. And that means that we have the possibility to actually do like a very thorough independent analysis of what happened in the world or in the countries we are assigned, and I'll explain this in a while, with the rights or the issues that we are doing a follow-up. So there are several different types of special procedures, of special rapporteurs and procedures. Some of us have a global mandate with some topics or rights assigned, and some others have some more local mandates, or mandates that are related only with a country or a specific topic or group of population. In my case, as it was mentioned before, and thanks for the presentation, I was appointed in April last year and started my mandate in the 1st of May last year. And I am the Special Rapporteur for two rights with a global scope: the right of freedom of assembly and the right of freedom of association. And these rights, although they are related among themselves, they have a whole separate body of standards and experiences. And then at the end, it is just like sometimes they go in different tracks, although the trends that affect one also affect the other one. So regarding freedom of assembly and of association, is the possibility of having all sorts of meetings, including this one. So this could be an assembly, public and private, in public spaces or private spaces, massive or small, hybrid or completely online or completely face-to-face, and also includes protests, which is the body of action that takes a lot of the time of the work of the rapporteur. And then the other one is the right of association, which is a possibility for individuals to come together, create an objective for action, and then establish activities to reach that objective, give themselves a body of decision-making process, and then also the right to and the freedom to seek, receive, and administrate, manage funding for the activities that they are going to do. So about the work, we do three main things. We collect information about the rights that is in our head. We process that information and create a knowledge, and then we voice out when human rights violations are being committed or when good practices are being identified, so we can disseminate them. And then we do these three things also with three main methods of work. We can do many other things, but then mainly what we do is that we help communications with governments and other actors. And with other actors, I also include courts, I include parliaments, I include also private institutions and even multilateral institutions. So we communicate with them through different channels, directly in private communications or publicly in public letters that then we are going to talk about those a little bit later on. And then also we do visits. So we go to countries and then we collect information from the field, talking with people in the field. We have two types of visits. Academic visits or non-official visits in which the rapporteurs go and just talk with different people in the field, and then we do official visits, which are the visits that are approved by the government. Sometimes the government invites us to visit, and then with those visits we always provide a report that are presented to the Human Rights Council. And the third way in which we do, especially the knowledge production, is the creation of reports. So we need to present two reports per year, one to the Human Rights Council and one to the General Assembly. And then these reports are only one part of the body of knowledge of what we do, but there is the more important one because it's the one that's linked to also to the body of knowledge that the UN provides. And then about reports, which is what you were mentioning, I started my mandate last year, so I have been a rapporteur like a year and some months, and then I have already presented three reports. The first report that I presented, it was to the General Assembly, and it was a report talking about the stigmatization and the harmful impact of narrative of stigmatization on the exercise of rights of freedom of assembly and of association. And this is a topic that I've been working a lot in my work as rapporteur. I'm sorry, I think something's happening with the light. So this is the first report. All these reports are available online. I can send some links if you are interested. The second report was a report that I presented this year at the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and that was focused on the super-electoral year. You know that 2023, 2024, and 2025 were the 3 years in which aggregated had the biggest number of elections in the history of humanity. So what happened in the super-electoral year, and then which are the learnings and the threats that we actually have now due to the process of elections, and what happened with freedom of assembly and association in those. And then I am presenting a report in October in New York to the General Assembly again, that is already on, and it's a report on the impact on the crisis of the financing for civil society and development, and then what is the impact for that on freedom of assembly and association, but in other rights, and also which are the recommendations for the process of creating perhaps a new basis for financing of development. And then I'm going to be working I am already starting working with a report that I will be presenting next year to the Human Rights Council, which is related to surveillance, for especially surveillance that is mediated or is related with digital technologies. So how surveillance enabled by technology is affecting freedom of assembly and association. So if you have information about this, I will really happy to hear from you. And then this brings to the last bit of your question. It is very important for civil society and other actors to send timely information to the mandate. So if there are new trends emerging, new laws, new procedural or administrative processes that are affecting both assemblies and associations, please set out. There are several ways of reaching the mandate, including sending official information for official communications and also sending information from your country and your region for the reports. So each report has a window of at least 1 month in which we do open calls to receive information. And the information that we receive is very important because it is then included in the report somehow. We have a lot of limits for the reports. The reports are very short, and now with the cut funding, it's every time are shorter. But then I always make the possibility to include cases that mention governments and mention situations. That is the best way also just to keep running the information of what happens in the region and in the country.
Thank you for that overview. One thing you mentioned was that you engage with governments and communicate with governments. ICNL, my organization, has been tracking legal initiatives for the past 5 years, and we've seen that there have been legal initiatives impacting civic space in over 77 countries through 286 different legal initiatives. Unfortunately, 84% of those are restricted. It includes everything from imposing barriers to the formation and operation of organizations, the funding of organizations. Many times these initiatives are counterterrorism or driven by money laundering concerns, but still have a negative impact on civil society. Could you share your insights when you communicate with governments about these initiatives, legal initiatives, and raise concerns about them? How do they typically respond to your recommendations? And
there are different ways of addressing and accepting or not the recommendation. Just for me, just to go from broad to small. Regarding MENA, which is the region which we are actually talking today, you know that according to different studies and reports, the Middle East has repressed and closed qualifications, for example, like the citizen monitor, and then the region is filled with cases of detention and prosecution of human rights defenders and journalists and censorship and many other actions. So if we see the situation that you are living in the relation with the Middle East countries, with the UN system and with our special procedures, we see a difficult system, but it's still, we see a very interesting landscape of how the special procedures have been communicating to the government, and then how the government has been responding. So as I mentioned before, we do reports, visits, and communication as the minimum of our volunteer work. So in relation to visits, most of the countries in the region don't accept official visits, or they accept only the visits that are considered like less problematic, right? For example, later on, the region has accepted visits of housing, the rapporteur on housing, or the rapporteur on violence against women and girls, and then we can talk about why is this. But then they don't accept the visits on rapporteurs of freedom of manifestation, meaning me, or freedom of expression, or the rapporteur on torture, or the rapporteur of the independent judiciary. So they accept some of them, but they perhaps see as like, I don't know, lower or less harmful than us. And that is a problem. I checked to prepare for this conversation. I checked the database, and the region has nearly 200 pending requests of visits in the history of special procedures, which is, I think, the highest. I didn't have time to compare between regions, but I think it's one of the highest. And then most countries haven't had a visit in around 10 years or more, and that is problematic, because then we cannot go and collect information from the field, and then we cannot speak freely about what we see. But then perhaps we can see, but we can try to figure out, and this is something that I'm trying to do in some of the most close spaces in other continents, is just to try to perhaps get creative and see what if we do a virtual visit. A virtual visit doesn't need the government to approve anything. It's going to be virtual. But then just try to figure out how to do it, because then in that specific case, government has not accepted visits. And about communication, I also checked the database for the region. And including Israel and Palestine for obvious reasons, the region has received in the past 5 years over 350 letters that are public now. Perhaps some more are coming, but then public now. And this is on average 20 per country, which is a high number. And the rate of response of the region is surprisingly high also, like more than 55%. And with the exception of Oman and Yemen, all countries have received letters today, this year. So what does it mean? That the special procedures process and systems have had a high attention in the region. And therefore when you see, and then even though when you see the responses that the government sends, these responses sometimes are very problematic. And then this is another point in which we can work together. Because sometimes we receive information from civil society, for example, of something that happened. It could be that a bill is to be adopted that will restrict civil society, or it is that an assembly was banned or dismissed violently, or that a human rights activist is being harassed. It is many. So we receive information, we draft the letters to the government, we send them to the government, and then we receive replies from the government saying, for example, that the assembly that was banned was illegal because it was harming the the morals of the country. In other moments, they reply that the human rights activist that has been detained is actually a terrorist. And in other moments, we don't receive information about the comments that we sent on letters, for example, bills. And then with that, we need also to work with you, with different actors in civil society, and even sometimes with parliamentarians. Every country works differently. Just to how to actually use these responses to create a wider conversation with other actors in each country. And this is something that we never do. Because first, we don't have much time either. I am only me. I am in my house. I don't have an office. I have a very small team with little capacity. But then our capacity in special procedures can enhance a lot more if we work hand to hand. And this is something that we still need to do. Once we receive a response from a government of the region saying whatever about our letters, how do we manage this information? Do we do a second letter? Do we try to make a meeting with the admission? So in general, just to summarize, the responses are there for the communication. There are no responses for visits, or very little, and then we need to do more together. But let me end by saying that you could say that this is a very gloom and bad scenario, right? So governments reply whatever, or governments don't reply, or governments don't accept visits, or they accept visits, they receive recommendations and they do nothing. But this doesn't make less useful the work that you do and the work that we do. So you may say that sending a letter to the government doesn't change anything, but it does. Because it creates something that I call like a scorecard for the memory of the human rights violations in the country, not to be forgotten. When I tell you that the country has 200 pending visits in the history of the special procedures, that itself is a statement of how full is the regulation and the openness of the government. And that makes a case, even by just landing there, that information, it actually shows what is happening in the continent. Also, with 355 letters sent, when you go to see the database and you see what has been happening, this is something for the memory of countries that will never be erased. This is like forever there, just showing what has been happening in all these years of violations of human rights. The second point, which is, I think it is important, is that this right attention of the situation in the region among different stakeholders, including governments and other actors. And this also is useful for you as a tool for advocacy, internally and externally. So mainly those are my comments on the reply, on the response. But then at some point, as I mentioned, I'm always open to find new ways of engagement, new ways of doing business, and also new ways to explore what to do when the government replies something that, especially from our side, we see that their reply is actually completely against standards, which is the case in many cases, not only in the region.
Thank you. In Iraq, there are numerous examples of restrictions on civil society. Some of these are not even based in the law itself, but rather restrictive practices. So, for example, security officials often ask for an extensive amount of additional information. In some regions, civil society has to obtain security clearances before carrying out particular activities. In addition, it's very difficult to open a bank account for many organizations. The NGOs must submit extensive information to open a bank account. Sometimes they have to seek approval from local banking and government authorities. And many times it's very difficult to receive funding from abroad. Are these challenges unique to Iraq, or is this part of a broader trend that you're seeing across the globe?
Yes, and this is very important also to mention in regards how different regions can learn from each other of what is happening and what can be also tested or proved in other places. So it is very common worldwide. In some places it's worse than in others, but especially in all that you mentioned, there are several trends that I can today. One is the misuse of the counterterrorism, anti-money laundering, and financing terrorism measures that are being weaponized and targeted against civil society in some cases, and in other cases they are being adopted. And all the securitization of the agenda and the securitization of the public policy have been actually misreading the possibility of respecting human rights while ensuring security. And this is something that I've been talking extensively in these days. So about the misuse of counterterrorism, anti-money laundering, and anti-financing of terrorism, the situation is very difficult worldwide, even in what are called now the perfect democracy, which is not existence, there is no perfect democracy, but even in the countries that have had a long protection of human rights and democracy, they are being misused to curtail civil society, but mostly to arbitrarily detain and ban assemblies and protests, mainly worldwide. This is affecting the pro-Palestine movement and the environmental movement, but it's not the only one. Regarding when I was saying that we do mainly three things, that we have mainly three working methods, we also do other projects. And then right now, for example, I am trying to work around the peer review process of the Financial Action Task Force, just to try to pull always the need to make a better implementation of Recommendation 8 and just try to figure out what is happening with Recommendation 5, which is the one related to banks, one of them. So this is something that I am trying to work extensively, not only to say that it is important to ensure security, but then security cannot be secure without respecting human rights, and also making sure that every time anything related to the action of the Financial Action Task Force is done, it is done with a clear risk assessment, with a risk assessment that is created also collectively with civil society, and that all restrictions all legislation, administrative procedures, and practices that are used against civil society or that affect civil society also need to be taken into account the update of Recommendation 8, which is something that is not happening as good as even the Financial Action Task Force would like. And also in other topics, not only this one, civil society is and human rights defenders and activists are persecuted and harassed by harmful narratives and stigmatization that I mentioned before, and this sometimes is very linked to the fight against terrorism and anti-money laundering. So all these narratives that civil society is supporting terrorism or that civil society is actually money laundering, which is something very in many countries, including my continent, and also using this narrative that the civil society has a wide history of financing terrorism is actually harming the reputation of civil society and is putting in danger the life of their representatives and activists. And then just to end this point, we have had a way of adaptation, study and enactment of bills and new laws that wants to create a total restriction for civil society. And then this affects the process of registration that in some cases makes it impossible associations to register, create a heavy burden to operate, including process and reprocesses from re-registration or reporting or audits that actually are being weaponized to certain types of organizations or to certain type of actors. So in many countries we see that the certain associations are possible to create. For example, the associations that work on gender equality or LGBTI issues. In other countries are the associations that work on transparency and accountability, anti-corruption measures, and even reforming the law or electoral reforms. Those are more targeted. And then for those of those, and then just going on the back point that you were mentioning, the freedom of speech, access and management is being heavily curtailed by the adoption of coordinated laws. And then I am trying to fight these laws in every case because these laws are not always harmful because of the narrative, but in cases like in Venezuela, in Georgia, in some other places in Africa and in Asia, and of course in MENA, you know it better, are actually making it possible the operation of civil society because are putting completely aside with the international actors to fund the organization.
Following up on that, have you seen examples of civil society organizations successfully pushing back on many of these laws, or some of these laws?
Yeah, there have been different moments, and I think sadly I need to just confirm that before February this year, the international community has been crucial to stop the adoption of certain of these laws. So, for example, I have the example of El Salvador. El Salvador very recently approved a very bad foreign agent law, but then this law have been debated in Congress three times before it was actually adopted, and in most of those times were the embassies of different countries that actually put pressure on governments and then like stop the adoption of this law. So this was useful in the case of actually just linking the action of civil society with other actors, especially embassies and international human rights actors. So this is a good example. But now I say sadly because then since Trump administration took over, some of the governments are actually being very quiet talking on this, and then it has been also changes in political changes in different countries that have actually like put them against or away the fight of human rights in the world, which is terrible because we are losing the champions of democracy and human rights worldwide. But this was one that it was relevant. In other cases, I have been like commenting on this norm on this bill, and then doing a lot of noise around its adoption, with the media trying to enhance the dialogue and then trying to identify why these laws are being adopted. It's the case of Paraguay last year. So in Paraguay, something very weird happened, is that the Congress had a bicameral, a very conservative country, parliament against civil society, had already a bicameral investigation process against certain civil society, and that was working. But then one day, out of the blue, foreign agent law was presented, and then when we were trying to figure out why, we figured out that then this law was introduced right after one of the congressmen went to meet people in Hungary. So he actually brought to Paraguay the idea of having the bill. And then we did and the bill was awful. And then every time the first draft, which was important. So linking with other actors, not only trying to do try to make aware the local communities why these laws are harmful. It's something that is useful. So in Paraguay, for example, the way in which I did the case for reaching the public audience, it was that the law was going to be affecting all the faith-based organizations in a very Catholic country, and that actually shifted the attention, and then the adopted law was a little bit less harmful than the first one that was presented. And then that is just regarding, about the international community. It is difficult. I have reacted in over 20 bills, not only foreign agent bills, but other type of bills. In most of the cases, these bills are adopted, but I feel that in some cases when we can do collectively certain pressure, the bills have, for example, sometimes they have more time for the register, so this is also buying time for associations to do also internal advocacy, raising of concerns, and so on. But then, so far, it's not easy to counter the adoption of these laws, but then we still can do it together.
What steps should be taken to promote networking at the national and regional levels in order to respond more effectively to the pressing issues of impacting freedom of association?
Yeah, one is monitoring. Monitoring is very important. So record everything that happens is crucial to maintain their memory, but also to expose the situation to the international community, and to keep also the possibility to connect with other actors. Because I know that sometimes it is difficult when you are in a very hard situation. You think that your situation is the worst and nobody is living the same, which is not true. And then perhaps you can learn from others. For example, regarding all the bank restrictions, there are so many countries and civil society actors that have been creating innovative ways of bringing money to the countries and using even outside banking system processes, which is something that it can be interesting to learn from. I also want to mention that civil society needs to monitor, but then also to collect stories and to connect the results of this monitor and those stories with the people that is not included in the sector. With the people more in the grassroots and with just the general citizens and the general people. And then so you can register the facts. You can register how difficult it is to open a bank account, but then also you can register the stories behind. So just for letting you like a personal story, Colombia has been having anti-money laundering legislations for decades now, and then opening a bank account for a civil society organization is not hard. But then getting them, for example, to give you a card, not even a credit card, a debit card is nearly impossible. And then I remember when I was still studying, I've been civil society most of my life, my professional life, I remember that every time I needed to go to the bank to do any specific action, it was a nightmare because then I needed to explain why what I'm doing, why we didn't have like income, why we didn't sell any product. So actually one day I registered the visit, and it was hilarious because the man in the bank, he didn't understand. He actually was a new manager of that branch, and he didn't understand what an NGO was. So he was saying one day, in a moment of frustration, he actually asked, "What do you build? Or which is the product that you sell?" And then I told him, "I sell dreams." And then I explained what I was doing at that time. And then he was so shocked. And then I did a whole story about this, and I published it. And it was amazing how, including people that worked in banks, understood how stupid it was for them to do some questions and so on. And in some cases, and I found out this after, those questions that they were doing, they were not doing it because of the request that they internally have for money laundering. It's because they actually didn't know and they didn't want to know the factor. So this is storytelling is important, and then you need to collect it just to connect better with the individuals that sometimes are the ones who can make the changes. Even more transformative than laws and rules. And the other one, very important, it is to connect with people from other regions and among yourselves to learn strategies, to come together and share information obstacles, and to grieve together and to find strength together. And how can you do that? Internet makes it easy. Now this type of events also in which you are, it makes it easy also just to connect with everybody and so on. So this is something that I think that you can connect and then also learn from other regions. Other regions have like the use of cryptocurrency. I don't like cryptocurrency, but so many regions, civil society are starting using cryptocurrency as the only way to actually receive and managing funds. That perhaps this is something that it could be interesting of learning how to use it, or also crowdfunding strategies that I am not fan either. But then there are ways there, and then also just learn of what is happening for the people in exile and how people in exile is actually trying to also do many things just to try to easy the work of close civil society. And in some places have been so successful that sometimes this is why the international cooperation has increased because of this.
Thanks. I just have one final question. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. The Middle East is currently experiencing unprecedented challenges, particularly after October 7th. Many people, including some even within civil society, are losing faith in human rights. Many are labeling NGOs or civil society organizations as weak, unable to protect people. So at this time, what message would you share with local NGOs in Iraq and across the region to encourage them to persevere and continue their vital work?
Just from my side, and just being very honest, I feel frustrated, and then this impossibility to actually protect lives of people, and then the frustration, especially me that I'm part of the system, although I am not the UN, the frustration that we feel in how little is actually being, how little successful is being the action that the UN and other international actors are doing around, for example, the genocide in Gaza and everything that is as part is also frustrating. But then my main message for you is that we cannot stop. We need to keep working even with frustration, even with the faith. And I think that it's not fair to say that we are losing faith in human rights. I think that we need to try to figure out how even claiming the space of the respected human rights is something that we need to do, even if it is harmful. And this is important because if we don't do it, if we leave that completely alone, then who is going to be taking these power spaces? Because it is very important for us, for you and me, to recognize that we hold a power space. The power space is our voice. The power space is our presence. The power space is our complaint. The power space is also the work that we do day that nobody sees, that nobody recognizes, that helps to protect one single person, or that helps to protect one single organization. If we don't do this, that single person, that single organization, and the whole system will collapse for absence of a factor. And then what we do is that we open the door for the bad guys, for the people who actually are misusing the human rights system, the people who is actually that wants to the people in power that wants to make the human rights system crumble. And if we step down, and if we fell off and give in the stress and the frustration, what we're doing is just to open the door for them to do whatever. So everything that we do matters, even if we don't see the results immediately, or even if we don't see, if we drop a drop of water, of clean water in a nasty pond, drop by drop, we still need to be there. We still need to be there. Otherwise, there is no hope. There is no hope for so many people who still count on us. So my message is just not to feel the distress, the frustration, but just not giving up, and just try to come with new ideas and try to come with new ways of doing it. From my side, I am doing all that is in my case. All that is in my power to actually try to come with new actors, try to celebrate the good things that happen, and try to understand that people in the field needs a lot of attention, but also the people that you serve, the values that you serve, the human rights, the protection of the rule of law, that need also attention, and every single thing that we do goes on that. From my side, I'll keep doing my work, but then without civil society, we special procedures cannot do the work. I live in Colombia, right? Far away from where you are. I cannot enter to many countries in your region because of visa problems, because I'm Colombian and I have a very weak passport. But then if I don't receive information from you, if I don't receive if I can contact the local actors through you, then my work is impossible, right? So we all depend on each other. And then this dependence is the one that needs to have us there, still hanging there and just doing the work that we want, that we need to do, because we are all on this. You are not alone, I am not alone. We are all working together. And then what we need is to keep pushing, even though if we don't see that the results are there, you can see that slowly some things change. And then perhaps we can talk in another moment how the international community has been changing its positions, but also its thinking about what is happening in Palestine, for example, and the genocide. And this is something that it has been very slow, and it has taken too many lives, and it has taken too many rights for too many people, even outside Palestine. And it's still, we can see some small advances, and then this is where we need to open up our eyes and say, this is where I am.
Thank you very much. I know it's, thank you for taking your early Saturday morning to spend with us today. I think we're out of time. We have 2 minutes, so we have 2 questions from the audience. If anyone would like to ask the Special Rapporteur a question.
مساء الخير، أنا الجوزان بلواري، المنسق العام لشبكة المحامين المتطوعين لحرية التعبير. كان عندي سؤال. أولاً بداية شكراً لجهودكم اللي تبذلوها في هذا المجال. عندي سؤال هو كيف يمكن لنا أن ننسق جهودنا مع حضراتكم في الحملات اللي نقوم بها، خاصة أنه إحنا بصدد تشريع قانون حرية التظاهر في العراق. أيضا من سودة مشروع قانون حق الحصول على المعلومات اللي هو متعلق بشكل كبير بحرية التعبير. كيف لنا أن نعمل بالتنسيق مع حضراتكم ونكسب منكم الدعم في جهودنا أو الحملات؟
مساء الخير. نعم. أنا من منظمة استجابة في بغداد. سؤالي نهاية هذه السنة راح تنغلق مكاتب الأمم المتحدة. شلون حيكون تنسيق عمل في مجال حقوق الإنسان ومنظمات المجتمع المدني؟ هل يتأثر عليها أو راح تبقى أكو طريقة للتواصل لتغطية هذا العمل؟ شكرا.
بس people هست رسمي والله people هست.
مساء الخير، أنا سامان من شبكة نيليج. هناك قانون معروض على مجلس النواب العراقي يتعلق بحرية التعبير بما فيه ما يتعلق بالتجمع السلمي وغيرها. هل أنتم مطلعون على هذا القانون؟ شكرا.
So maybe we'll stop there and let you answer. Oh, one more question, I guess.
أنا أدوار شبكة النساء العراقيات. سؤالي بشكل خاص، هناك محاولات لتعديل قانون المنظمات غير الحكومية أرسل إلى البرلمان العراقي. هل أنت معنية بهذا أيضا بهذا الشكل أو ذاك بهذه القضية حتى الواحد يعرف وين يوجه مع من يتصل من المقررين الخواص في هذا الشيء؟
Maybe we'll stop there and you let you answer.
Those three? Okay, so regarding let me turn off this the interpretation. So regarding the adoption of laws, or the study of the adoption of laws, what I always ask is just to send me the text of the bill that is being studied, but with the translation because, well, I don't speak Arabic. And then second, an analysis that you do on these laws, especially related to the local provisions that you have, the constitutions, the penal codes, everything. So I can do an analysis and send a letter to the government. And then this is important, especially for my mandate. Everything is important, but for my mandate, the local NGOs and the Freedom Project. And then what you can do is to send them over mail. So if you go to my the website of my mandate, there is a link. There is an email there, and that email I don't have access to that email. But if you see the email, and just please pay attention to what I'm saying. The email has like human rights. It is something like HRC/free assembly, something like that. And then before putting the ad, please put a slash on my last name, Roméro, that perhaps you can see there. And then that's the way I can get it directly. Otherwise, the organizers of the event have my email. So send me that, and with that I'll do the analysis, and I'll send a letter to the government. The more clear the information you send me, the easier for me to advance. Because then again, I have a global mandate and I'm reacting. Actually, this week I actually sent a letter to another government due to the adoption of a rule. So this is something that is important, and I can react. But then the thing is not only what can I do, but then what can we collectively do with the analysis that I do and the letter that I send to the government. So these type of letters that are commenting on legislation or policies or on bills are released publicly, are made public, like I think that is 2 or 3 days after they are sent to the government. So with that, you need to actually put that information on the field. We have a problem that I don't speak Arabic, so the letter will go in English, for example. But if you could translate it to Arabic and then just put it there to discuss it with other civil society, to discuss it to the media, to discuss it with the parliament, and to make a big fuss about this. This is how we work together. So just please send me both the attempts of amend laws of NGOs and the freedom of protest rights. I don't know specifically about the law of NGOs, but I'm always concerned about amending these laws because I haven't seen one single case in which these amendments are actually to improve the situation. So of course I am just by just following what has been happening, I am concerned. Just to try to send it to me and just establish direct contact to me. Perhaps any of the organizers can give you guys my email. About the law on freedom of expression and assembly and freedom of expression and access to information, as you know, there is a rapporteur that is working on freedom of expression, which is Irene Khan. So I won't take that one, but then if you send it to me, I make sure that she directly receive it, because that will be easier for her to actually to react. And if at some point she decides also to do a letter, sometimes what we do is that we come together, we can do a whole letter using the 3 or 4 pieces of bills. This is something that we have done in the past, actually. So if she agrees, we can do that. So that is the question about the review on laws, and please send me the information as soon as you have it. As I mentioned, the bill translated, and then also your own analysis on the internal problem of the bill. And about the question of the UN, the offices of the UN are not being closed at the end of the year. Actually, if you guys are listening to the information, what is happening is that some of the offices are being translated and being moved to both Panama or Kenya, and I'm not sure if the Bangkok office are also being receiving some new tasks. So for now, the UN is not ending. We don't know if that is going to be the case in the future, but for now, it is not. From our side, we are not a UN, right? I'm not in a UN office. I have 1.5 or 2 staff from the UN, but I still work even if the UN is not there, because the mandate, it was not given to me by the UN. The mandate was given to me by the Human Rights Council, meaning by the government. So only the government can erase this mandate. So in that case, of course, when the UN is affected, especially when the Office of the High Commissioner is affected, because then we depend logistically from the office, of course we are affected. And then usually we have 2 visits per year to countries. Now we have only 1, and then the supporting staff is there, but then rest assured that at least for what it is the end of this year, and then we see what happens next one. I am not saying that the UN is not in a crisis. It is in a crisis, and it is in a very deep crisis, but I don't see the closing of the UN anytime soon. So we try to figure out also how to use what we still have, like special procedures, that we don't depend on the UN funding, because we don't get funded by the UN. So we still try to use this to raise our voices, to bring the information on front, and we'll see what happens in the meantime. I'm still hopeful that other countries are going to put more money in supporting the UN. We'll see. But then it's not true that at the end of the year the UN is closed.
Thank you very much for taking the time with us today. We really appreciate it. Loved hearing about your insights.
No, thank you. I'm very sad I'm not there sharing with you, but then I'm here always in the distance of a cake, so reach out to you.
Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay, thank you. Ciao.